6:14, so one more minute.
It's very precise time.
Yeah, like the last time, no? One more minute.
I've heard.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our professorial inaugural lectures for 2023. I'm Maria Fazli. I'm the Executive Dean for the Faculty of Science and Health and the Professor in the School of Computer Science and Electronic Engineering. Welcome to those of you here at the University of Essex this evening, and a warm welcome to many of you who are joining us via our live stream on YouTube. It's wonderful to have you here with us tonight. 2023 marks the 10th anniversary of this prestigious lecture series, and these lectures are a highlight of our academic year, giving us a chance to come together to celebrate the world-leading research talent here at the University of Essex. Since 2013, we've been inviting our newly appointed professors to speak about their work to an audience of members of the public, our students and staff, alumni, and invited guests. We hope we will inspire you by giving you an insight into our world-class research across the social sciences, science and health, and the arts and humanities. Tonight is our final professorial inaugural lectures for this academic year, and I'm delighted to welcome Professor Martin Reed from the School of Computer Science and Electronic Engineering, and Professor Spiros Vrontos from the Department of Mathematical Sciences, which means you will have the chance to hear from two outstanding academics from the Faculty of Science and Health. The Faculty of Science and Health brings together 6 academic departments and schools, together with a further 7 research centers and institutes, covering a broad range of science and health. Research in our faculty has a strong interdisciplinary dimension within the university and beyond. Our work covers some of the key cutting-edge areas of the 21st century, research such as in data science, artificial intelligence, health and well-being, and agricultural innovation. Across our 3 faculties, our communities of more than 800 Essex researchers are change makers, innovators, and free thinkers. They pose bold questions, tackle real-world problems, shape thinking, and influence policy. These professorial inaugural lectures are designed to inspire and perhaps challenge through the celebration of our excellence in research. You'll see all of the qualities of our unique Essex research mindset demonstrated by the world-class academics speaking tonight. After the lecture, there's a bit of a bonus. I hope you'll take the opportunity to ask questions, and then you will be very welcome to join us for the drinks reception, where you'll have the chance to speak to our professors, but also to each other. I would like to start by first introducing our first speaker, Professor Martin Reed from the School of Computer Science and Electronic Engineering. The school is home to academic experts who are shaping our world through their work at the forefront of artificial intelligence, future networks, gaming, the Internet of Things, embedded systems, and robotics. Our world-renowned researchers are involved in an incredible range of projects having real impact around the world. The school comprises of 4 current research groups: artificial intelligence, brain-computer interfaces and neural engineering, communications and networks, and robotics and embedded systems. The work done within the school focuses on exploring fundamental questions in these areas, plus applied research which looks to find solutions to key challenges. The research of the school is supported through excellent facilities that provide the required infrastructure and testbeds to undertake international leading experimental work, and we will hear about some of this tonight. Professor Martin Reed's research represents how our school works how our schools work is integral to our technology-dependent world. You are all carrying at least one mobile phone with you tonight, so that's how dependent we are on these devices. His research is influencing computer networking and network security, and his most recent work looks at security for the Internet of Things and software-defined networks, developing information and content-centric networking and the transmission of multimedia over networks. All these are now vitally important areas, so this is a perfect time to hear all about his work. But before I give the floor to Martin, I want to say that just by pure coincidence, or because we plan events so well, today is the World Telecommunication and Information Society Day. And this is celebrated every year on the 17th of May to raise global awareness of the potential that the internet and information and communication technology can bring to society and the economy. I just want to give you a little bit of information just to tie this with Martin's presentation. The World Telecommunication Day was first celebrated on May 17th in 1969. It's to mark the founding of an organization called the International Telecommunication Union and the signing of the first Telegraph Convention back in 1865. In March 2006, the UN General Assembly proclaimed May 17 the annual World Information Society Day. And in November 2006, the ITU, so this is the International Telecommunication Union, Plenipotentiary Conference in Antalya, Turkey, decided to celebrate both Telecommunication Day and Information Society Day on this very same day, May the 17th. So we are truly delighted to have Professor Martin Reed here with us today to tell us more about his work in telecommunications and networks. So Martin, the floor is yours.
So Maria, thank you very, very much. I wasn't aware that today was such a coincidence there. Well, let me just fast forward to my slides. So thank you very much for coming here. Thank you, Maria, for the introduction. I'm looking forward to telling you about my research. I've titled this, the talk, Zoom, 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 talking over the internet. I'm not going to talk about Zoom very much. I'm going to talk about video conferencing. Zoom, there are other things other than Zoom, and a little bit about how we measure the quality of it, or some ideas about how we do that, and about the security. So first of all, what was my journey here? How did I become a professor? Well, I come from a background where my parents, in fact I'm going to introduce my dad who's listening to this right now, I hope you're on the thing, he was an engineer working for BT. Is similarity there? I don't know. But him and my mother come from a socioeconomic background and history when they could never go to university. So I grew up not even knowing what university was, and here I am now, many years later, a professor. And the reason I want to say that is not just about me, but we're sitting in a university which is about supporting transformative education for people like me who may be the first generation of people to even go to university from their family. So I did go to university, and as you can still hear, but I didn't go directly the normal route. I didn't go from being an undergraduate to a PhD to a research post to so on and so on. I took a bit of a sidestep. So after I did my undergraduate degree, I worked as a consultant in the sound reinforcement industry, or what you might call a roadie. And I wanted to show this because that had a big influence. In fact, it had an influence on my research career as well. Although, that was a festival, I think, on that night. I think Motorhead were about to play a bit later, but on another night, Van Morrison. So you can pick. I'm not really saying anything about any particular type of music. But so I had a journey that was a bit circuitous, eventually after that doing a PhD. And then over the course of my research career, I've been very fortunate to have a wide area of interest in the area of communications and networks, spanning everything for things like information-centric networking, how we control networks. I'm not going to be talking about a lot of the stuff at the bottom here because I can see people's eyes glazing over already. A lot of that is boiler room activity, how we move the packets around. It's interesting for me, but maybe not the best thing to describe today. So what I'm going to talk about are things which are maybe more accessible for my research. So the network test beds that make this possible, I very briefly mentioned those, and Maria mentioned an introduction. But then, a strand in my research all the way through my career, which is how speech is transmitted for video conferencing, and then a little bit about security, and maybe some notes about your own security when you use the internet as well. I should say that all my research is very collaborative. When I talk about my research, it's not really my research, it's our research. A list of people over there, research students, I think there's 1 or 2 here now, and in the past, and research officers that really, a lot of the work is co-created with them. And I've been fortunate to work in over 20 research projects with a large number of organisations, research institutes, and a lot of it is very collaborative in nature. So I mentioned test beds, and it's interesting. It's a very important part of our technology in our department. We provide test beds for EU projects and other such areas. We're centred on Essex. It's a speciality that we provide. And here's an example of one we've worked on recently, provided for a project. International scale, so we're talking about connecting people in from Europe, Japan, USA, Korea, other places around the world. Maybe 100 nodes, and all of those people can come in, centred at the network at Essex, and then do research into things like multimedia networking, machine learning for cybersecurity, which is an area that I'm very interested in, something called information-centric networking. So instead of transporting packets from one place to another based upon their destination, we can say, well, give the information a name and send the packets around the network based upon the name of the data. I'm very proud that some of this work has been included in 5G network standards. And of course, we're now working towards 6G in the research laboratories. So on these test beds, we do various amounts of research. One example is speech for video conferencing. I've chosen here a picture that you can all relate to, maybe not immediately, but we all use things like this every day now, particularly since the pandemic. It's a video conferencing system. Now, when they draw things in patents, it's never very nice. You draw a picture, the patent lawyer takes it and then turns it into some awful line drawing. But I wanted to show this because this is work that I did in 1999 with BT. I was working at the University of Essex. It's patented by BT. But the point is, we're talking across to a computer at the other end. Someone's listening to it at the far end and talking back to us. And these video conferencing systems have now, transformed our lives for good or bad, particularly with the pandemic. It's something that, although I've been working with for a long time, I was using in my research projects. We were talking to people, using video conferencing daily or weekly. Of course, during the pandemic, all of a sudden, the things like Zoom became, the thing we're all using. And it's important that we understand how well do these systems actually work. And some of my research has been looking at how do we measure the quality of those systems. And some of this work was included, in fact, in Skype for Business. Anyone remember that product? It's now kind of almost defunct and replaced by Teams. But how well it worked, how we can measure it was an important thing, and it was included in that work. But more recently, we've looked at other ways of measuring how well these systems work. I'm going to show you a video now. I'm going to stay silent during the video because otherwise they can't get it across the stream. But to watch out for it when I play the video, just look and see what's happening. I think all of you will recognise some of the things that happen in the video from your own experiences when you've used things like Zoom. And to put it in context, when we were looking at this work here, the idea from BT was that in the 90s we could have a virtual boardroom and people could sit round it and talk to each other. And that was revolutionary at the time. And it was, we couldn't implement it then. It was another almost, 10 years before you could really start using these things. And of course, even longer before people were using them day to day. We were thinking about that. Just have a look at this video and see if you can relate to some of the things that are happening. So I'm just about to start playing the video now.
Tyler
has joined the meeting.
All right, well, this is Trip. Who's here?
Tyler's here.
Beth's here.
Okay, the purpose of today's meeting is to discuss the...
Yeah, I'll be able to do it in like 30 minutes. John?
Has joined the meeting.
Hi, John.
Hi.
I was just trying to go over the purpose of today's meeting, which is to discuss the
Tyler?
Has joined the meeting.
Sorry, guys, I got cut off.
Any questions before we move on?
Yes, this is Beth. What's our best plan of attack for the second quarter?
Question
What
actually.
we should do.
Oh,
go ahead. Oh, well, I think
Well,
what we should do
it
is
actually
really
depends on
diversify.
how you look at it, 'cause
and
the
really
re- Go ahead.
Go ahead. I think
Given
what we-
sales,
what we
we're at
really-
a
I
Let,
think
let me just say that
Okay.
that was a great graph, John. Tyler?
Well, my main concern with the projections from last year was that they're just insufficient. I mean, they're not even taking into account.
Did we lose Tyler again?
Hello?
Clear at the back. Okay. So, I think we're all familiar with some of those things, and we've been interested in measuring the quality of these systems for a long time, right back from when I started working in the 90s, with various things. And I just want to share a little bit more about how we've found new ways of doing that. Because trying to make these things work better, going back to our idea of having a virtual boardroom where you could sit round and it's almost like you were really there. It's not like that, is it? It's like that video there, even today. So how can we improve it? Well, we can start by measuring how it actually works. So what we've done more recently is say, well, let's not use any of our fancy engineering metrics, so number of packets that are dropped, signal to noise ratios and other things that engineers are used to doing. Let's say, no, let's see how well do people talk when they're using these things. So we've gone to linguistics, talked to the people that know, and looked at their methodology of measuring how we communicate, how we interact when we're talking. And they use something called conversation analysis. And what they do is, for example, and you can spot this, next time you're sitting around a dinner table, listening to a conversation, what you'll find is that someone will have they'll start talking, we call that a turn, strange word, anyway, and then someone else will start talking, another turn, so a turn taking. And what you'll notice is that when one person stops talking, subconsciously what's happening, someone is listening to, they're getting to the end of the conversation, and I'm going to start talking, immediately they finish. And if you listen very carefully, there's no gap, as it says up there, no gap and no overlap in that communication. So that is normal turn-taking communication, something that we do without even thinking about it. But it gets disrupted once we have these systems like Zoom, Teams, Skype, iMessenger, whatever it is. And the problem is because we get delay in the system. So this graph on the left, taken from one of my PhD students' work at Caris Bailey a few years ago. This is work started just before the pandemic. We got people in a room at BT, so this is a project with BT, sat them down, held virtual meetings, recorded them, and then looked to see what was happening in the conversation. And what we can see is, and we've got no delay, we see examples of lots of no gap, no overlap conversation, as normal conversation. As soon as you get delay, which is what you get in a network, so in the middle there, nearly half a second, and to the far side, nearly a second, you no longer have those normal conversations. People talk, they stop talking, someone else talks. You get a gap. Or, even worse, on the right-hand side, remember that video you heard on, and no, you talk, no, you talk. I think we've all experienced that on Zoom. And that's called a false start, we tend to call it in the engineering. The linguistics have a different word, but we tend to call it false start. And that's a major problem for these teleconferencing systems. And we're interested in trying to measure them. What we can do is, by measuring how people talk, we can revolutionize the way of saying this is a good or bad teleconference. At the moment, there's no way to measure is it a good or bad teleconference. But using this kind of technology, which has just gone into you mentioned the ITU, so this has gone into an ITU standard, and using machine learning techniques that we're putting in, this will become a way of measuring how good things like Zoom really are. So that's some work that I've done in the area of communicating over these systems like Zoom. And I want to talk about, are these systems secure? Now, the way that these systems do their security is in fact the same as you're using in a web browser. So, when you use a web browser, you think, well, is it secure? Well, it is if it's got that padlock. on the little you see the URL up there, you see the little padlock. If you see that padlock, it's a secure communication. I've got some padlocks here that I prepared earlier. So I wanted to tell you about cybersecurity in this sense. How does it work? Well, it uses encryption algorithms. I'm not going to do the mathematics today, but we can sort of do an analogy with a box and some keys and a message moving through the network. So I'm going to have a person called Alice sitting here, over here, because in cybersecurity we have Alice and Bob is going to be this bottle of water over here. Okay. And I'm going to be the man in the middle, which is usually called Mallory because my name's Martin. I'll be the evil man in the middle, Martin. So, when Alice wants to send a message to Bob, of course, they take a network packet, this box, they put their, whoops, that's a mistake, isn't it, on the microphone, put the message inside the box, send it across the network to Bob. That's straightforward. That's how communication works. But of course, me, the evil man in the middle, can just open the box and steal the message, change it. So we need to provide some cryptography for that. And of course, the straightforward way to do it is, I should have a second key somewhere. Yeah. So the way it's done, I'll put the box down, is very simple. We have two keys. One for Alice over here, one for Bob, on top of the box. And if you want to send a message, you just simply lock the box up. Okay, Alice would use a key, lock the padlock. Of course, me, the evil man in the middle, can't access it. And of course, over here, Bob can unlock it with the key. So that's a sort of analogy of how these cryptographic algorithms work. Two keys shared by Alice and Bob. The problem with that is, how does Alice get the key? It turns out that cryptography, you can prove, as long as the key is large enough, you can have perfect cryptography. No one will ever break it. The problem, though, is how the hell do you get the key? So one way to get the key is, Bob over here has got the cryptographic algorithm. They've got two keys. Well, the obvious way to send it is to open a network packet up, put in the key, and send it to Alice, so Alice has now got a key. But as soon as you do that, of course, me, the evil man in the middle, can steal the key and, then break open any lock. So the problem has become, how do we get the keys for these cryptographic algorithms? And the answer came not from my work, I should add, but I'm just trying to lead on to some other work, is something called a public key cryptography. And what they did was find a way to say, look, we'll create a pair, a key and a certificate, I'm going to call this, or a public key. And what we can do is generate an infinite number of identical padlocks and have one single key. Now, Bob here is going to hold on to the key and never give it to anyone. Generates this infinite number of padlocks that we give to you and to Alice. So it can go over the network, unlocked. Alice, I'm the evil man in the middle, I can't do anything with it, but it can go over here to Alice. Alice can now lock the box up. Even Alice can't undo it because she doesn't have the key. I'm the man in the middle, the evil man. I can't undo it because I don't have the key. Now Bob can get it. So that's the solution. All of our internet security relies upon that kind of technology. But if you were watching carefully, you'll see there's a problem there. How does Alice know that this padlock that we sent was really from Bob and not from me, the evil man in the middle that's replaced it with my own padlock? And that is the problem. And so I just want to just very briefly show a demonstration. So the problem is that the person in the middle, Martin, often called Mallory in the security text, can in fact steal the password, the padlock, sorry. And once they've stolen the padlock, replaced it with their own, that man in the middle attack allows the person in the middle to steal it. How do we get around that? Well, what happens if you take your mobile phone, you have to look inside it carefully, what's happened is that there are about 100 organisations around the world that are called certificate authorities. And what they've done is they've created a high-level padlock that is, that is used to lock up the padlock when it goes across the network, okay? And when it goes across the network, Alice can check that that lock is correct. And if it is, they know that that padlock that's sent across the network really came from Bob. Now, there are 100 organisations that manage this in the internet, approximately, give or take 10 or 20. How do those padlocks, how does this padlock get on? Well, the answer is that when you buy your mobile phone, Google, in this example here, or Apple if you've got an Apple phone, what they've done is they've put those certificates on your phone, sold you the phone, and therefore you can guarantee that it's secure. But what happens if somebody steals that certificate? So here's an example that I showed during one of my final year lectures, but I'll just show it to you now briefly. So looking on the internet, I've inserted a man-in-the-middle attack by starting a system that's about to start in a moment. Okay, there we go. So this is inspecting all the packets between my web browser and the web server. Start them, and all hacking tools use matrix screenshots, of course. So we'll start that there. But the hacking tool has started, and when I go to the web browser and start using it, I've got the padlock up there. Okay, the padlock, so it should be secure. But what we can see on the right-hand side are the messages are being intercepted. In fact, even worse than that, I'll just put a username and password in. There we go. And push enter round about now. And the messages are all being intercepted in the middle there. The man-in-the-middle attack I talked about is happening. Why? Well, because the man in the middle has got a copy of that certificate. Now, okay, I didn't steal one of the 100 top-level security certificates in the world. I generated my own version of that and shared it around. But the point I want to make is that, if those certificates are stolen or ill-used, then, as you can see, it's not really my password down the bottom there, can get stolen. So I've managed to, it says MJ Reed, my very secret password. But the point is that I was able to decrypt that. Now, it's a sobering thought to think that those 100 organisations manage everything about internet security, including on Zoom, your browser, with your bank, everything. The downloads of the updates to your operating system. If they are at fault, then the whole internet falls down. Now, those organisations are based not in every country. So, for example, a sobering thought is that India, the largest country in the world by population, as we've just found out recently, didn't have a single one of these internet security authorities till this year. That meant that all of the internet services in India were relying upon certificate authorities that were based in USA, Europe, China, Russia, maybe North Korea, who knows. And if any one of those 100 organisations was to share their certificates and keys with the US government, for example, or an attacker, then the attack I've just shown you can actually happen. Okay, so it's a sobering thought. But the one thing to remember is if you are using the internet, look for that padlock. It is actually fairly secure. You're not going to be hacked just yet. But we want to look for better ways of doing this. The problem with this system is it relies upon algorithms and pseudo-random numbers. We want to try and improve that. And so what we've done is said, well, rather than using the techniques I've just told you about, we can look at another way. So take this mobile. This is a graph that shows in real time the way that the wireless signal to a mobile phone changes to the wireless hotspot. There's probably a wireless hotspot, probably up there. I'm not sure, no, that's probably something else, the fire thing. In here, there'll be, yeah, over there. So behind us, we can see a wireless hotspot. And to take this graph, I kept it completely stationary, okay? It's not live now because I'm as a recording, but it's changing randomly. And what's interesting is that random pattern between that wireless hotspot and this mobile phone is unique to that pair. It's completely different from the random pattern that will be happening in your mobile phones. And so what that means is we can use that to generate an absolutely guaranteed unique key that can never be copied by anyone else. And that's going to become very important because sometime in the next year, 5 years, 10 years, quantum computers are going to be able to crack the systems that I showed you to keep secure on the internet. So we're going to need systems like this, using things like true randomness from the world in order to be able to support that. Getting right up to date with my research, and just to close, very recently I've started working on a project with UK policing, and this is to support them tackling a very serious issue of online sexual harm, particularly supporting harm against vulnerable adults and children. And what we're doing here is providing a system that allows them to go into a perpetrator's premises, attach a box to their home router, and very quickly find, where are the mobile phones in their house? What are those mobile phones doing? So that the police, when they go in, they can find the right mobile phone. They're not unscrewing the Apple TV from the wall and sending that back for forensic analysis when that's not doing anything at all. Instead, they can find the hidden mobile phone in the house that may be doing the very nasty stuff that these people are doing. So that's some work that we're taking active research in and turning it right now, in the next few weeks, we're working on this, in order to turn it into a product that hopefully will be used by UK policing. And so you can see an example, we've shown examples of research spanning from big research test beds right the way through to systems which we're hoping will be in use in UK policing. I'm going to conclude there. Just to add that, I'm very proud to be working in a university where we have sort of transformative and research-led education. And that's, think about my background, coming from somewhere that no university background in my family. And I'm very proud that we're working in a university which is hopefully supporting some people in a very similar situation to me. And so that's important to me. We can see that the research that I've been doing is highly collaborative. It needs collaboration. In fact, the research test beds, they're naturally collaborative. They're bringing in partners from all around the world and bringing them in to connect to our test bed and doing that kind of research. We've seen how video conferencing tools, they need to understand how people talk, how they communicate to make them better. We know that they're not perfect today, but to get that idea of a virtual desktop which we can all sit around and have a perfect meeting, we're still a long way from that, I think. And so hopefully some of my research will be addressing that. And finally, when we think about security, hackers are constantly evolving, and the cybersecurity has to keep ahead of that. And that's the research that I'm very excited about being involved with. And just one last point, don't panic just yet. The hack I showed you is not likely to be practical now, but unfortunately in the next 10 years it probably will be. So we need to be worried about the fact that research needs to give us the answers to that soon. And I'll conclude there, and thank you very much. Hand over the Gordon.
Thank you, Professor Reid, for this truly insightful talk. I will be really careful now, paying attention to the padlock. I've always been doing that, but now I'm going to be more conscious in doing that. So I would now like to introduce our second speaker for this evening, Professor Spiros from the Department of Mathematical Sciences. With specialisms including pure and applied mathematics, data science, statistics, and actuarial science, maths at Essex has a really broad reach. This stretches from exploring the mathematical modeling of brain evolution to improving patient care, to solving scheduling problems at the port of Felixstowe, and from leading the data revolution at the heart of London's tech city to pioneering work on using big data within government. Research at Essex explores issues that have a real impact on people's everyday lives and the world around us. Mathematical sciences research groups work closely both in the department and with academics across the wider university to develop strong interdisciplinary research. And the impact of Essex mathematicians is growing through our sector-leading Knowledge Transfer Partnerships program, which has a significant commercial impact by allowing numerous businesses to benefit from our cutting-edge research. Spiros is a professor of actuarial science in the Department of Mathematical Sciences, and he's the lead of the actuarial science research team and served for many years as course director for the Bachelor's in Actuarial Science and the MSc in Actuarial Science. His principal research is concerned with actuarial mathematics and actuarial modeling, design of optimal bonus-malus systems, asset liability management for pension funds, performance measurement for pension funds, hedge funds and mutual funds, so you can ask him all about funds at the break, predictability of financial time series, risk management, and solvency and risk theory. His publications have appeared in internationally recognized and world-leading academic journals. And Professor Spiros Rondos is a member of the European Finance Association and of the Global Association of Risk Professionals. So, Professor Rondos, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for coming. It's a pleasure to be here today speaking to you about my work. Thank you, Maria, for organizing this. Thank you, Holly. So, as you see, I'm going to speak about artificial intelligence applications in insurance and finance. Some people who may be real experts in artificial intelligence find that what I'm talking about is a small subset, perhaps, of what they know, but I consider myself still young and still learning. So, as some people here may not have a very big knowledge, let's say, in insurance, what we're going to talk about is an introduction to insurance and some specific parts of insurance policies, those in automobile insurance. Insurance in general is divided in two main categories: life insurance, and everything that is not life insurance is general insurance. So, automobile insurance is general insurance together with property insurance and other types. So, we will see also some actuarial, statistical, and data science models that have been applied in this, in insurance, automobile insurance, and also in finance. Some of the models that I have used together with some co-authors, such as quantile regression models and machine learning models. So, what is really insurance? Insurance is a risk transfer mechanism. So, there are two parties or more, but usually there are two parties only: the insured and the insurer, the policyholder and the insurance company. The policyholder may have a problem in handling a particular risk if a claim is happening, he doesn't have, let's say, the money to pay for the particular loss. So he is transferring, or she is transferring the risk to the insurance company, and the insurance company, and in order to do that, he's paying a premium, or she's paying a premium. And the insurance company collects the premium. Let's assume that this is happening in the beginning of the calendar year, and if an accident, a claim is happening, pays the losses using this premium. So, of course, the insurance company is not doing this only with one policyholder. Usually, the insurance companies are trying to sell their products to many policyholders in order to collect the premiums from all these people and have higher profitability. So, what is happening if they sell it to a large number of policyholders is that some of them will not have an accident. Let's say that we are in automobile third-party liability insurance. So some of us will not have an accident while driving, but some others may have an accident. We don't know in the beginning of a calendar year, so let's assume that all these 10 people have been all insured in the 1st of January 2023. We don't know until the end of the year who will have an accident, how many accidents they will have, how many claims the insurance company has to pay, and what will be the claim amount. So here, for example, we have that 3 people out of the 10 had an accident. Now, there is the following thing regarding the risk structure of the portfolio of risks. It is heterogeneous, at least for now and for the next decades, and so you'll see why this could change. So, from these 10 policyholders, 7 of them had no claims, 3 of them had claims. This person here, so this person here had one claim of £500, this person one claim of £1,000, the insurance company has to pay more, and this person here had in this year 2 claims of £1,000 and £1,500. So the insurance company does not know in advance who will have these accidents and how many it will cost, how much it will cost. So, but the easy thing to do in order to calculate the premium is the following. Let's think, we have 10 policyholders, the total claim amount we have to pay is 4,000, and we have 4 claims. So S, which is the total claim amount, is equal to the sum of the 4 claims, claim amounts, 4,000. So if we divide the total cost with these 10 people, we will have that the premium should be 400. So we can ask each of the policyholders, if we knew what's going to happen, to pay £400 to each to the insurance company. So the main principle in insurance, the main reason that insurance companies are profitable is because the collected premiums from all policyholders are sufficient enough to cover for the few policyholders who have losses. The thing is that insurance companies do not know in the beginning of the year which policyholder is of higher risk, and if they have an accident, how much it will be the claim amount. So we can go a little bit further to these 2 variables and examine them a little bit in more detail. So for these 10 policyholders, the variable that we will first look is the claim frequency. So for the first 7, we had 0 claims. For the second 2, we had 1 claim. And for the last one, we had 2 claims. So the average claim frequency for these 10 policyholders is 0.4 claims per person. This in practice means that out of 10 policyholders in a particular year, we expect to have 4 claims, or for 1 policyholder, every 10 years, we expect to have 4 claims. Also, the variable of the claim severity, the claim amount, is very important. So what was the claim amount variable, the claim severity? We write all the claims amounts when these are positive. So the expected value, the expected claim severity, is 4,000 divided with 4 is 1,000. So if we multiply, this is the basic rule in insurance to calculate the premiums. You find the claim frequency, the expected claim frequency, the expected claim severity, and you multiply them. So how many claims on average do we expect, multiplied with how much on average will be the claim amount. And this will give us the 400 pounds, the premium, the annualized one. So, just one moment. If this is so simple, why do we need artificial intelligence? Why do we need, let's say, data science models or advanced statistical models or advanced actuarial models? The reason is that the insurers are insuring the policyholders in the beginning of the year. So in the beginning of the year, they must collect the premiums and pay later without knowing these variables and how many claims, the claim frequency and the claim severity. In addition, what we have discussed here is one premium for all, the same. This may be in accordance with the solidarity principle in insurance, but in practice it's not fair to someone who is insured for 10 years and has 0 claims to pay the same with someone that is driving carelessly and has 1 claim every year. So in order to make this heterogeneous portfolio more fair for regarding the premium is to consider classifying the policyholders in groups. In this way, if we do our job well, we will have that the groups are distinct well from each other, and inside the group we will have homogeneity. So heterogeneity between the groups, but homogeneity inside each group. So the people belonging, the policyholder belonging in different groups will pay different premiums, but the policyholders in the same group, since they have the same risk, will have the same premium. So there are various ways of doing that in insurance. And also in data science, so the name classification for data scientists and statisticians must ring some bells. So some of the early ways to do that was using Markovian bonus-malus systems, or systems that followed the Markov process based on the Russian mathematician Markov. But this did not take into account, let's say, other characteristics that the policyholders may have. So the second attempt was with optimal bonus-malus systems, taking into account first only the frequency component. So fitting some probability distributions to the number of claims, we were able to calculate, to find the distribution of the risk of a policyholder to have a claim. So for example, after doing the mathematics, we can end up having that the policyholder initially will pay 100, all of them will pay initially 100. If after 1 year they have 0 claims, they will have a discount and they will pay 74. Of course, these are have been scaled in order to start with 100. So if the premium was 550, we divide with 550 and then multiply with 100 in order the basis to be 100 to be easier for our eyes to see the differences, increases and decreases. Now, bonus means that they're having a decrease in the premium. Malus, it means that they have an increase in the premium. So here, if they have 1 year claim-free, they go to 74. Second year claim-free, they go to 59. If at 59 they have this year 1 claim, they go to 315. That's a little bit unfair. We see that the premium is almost 5 times more than the previous. And what happens if a policyholder has a claim with £1,000 claim amount and another one has a claim with 50 or £100 claim amount or something really smaller? So we should take into account the severity component also. So during my master thesis and the first year of my PhD, together with my supervisor, Nick Frankos, we developed an optimal bonus-malus system that took into account both the frequency and the severity component. So so it seems similar with the previous one, since we have here the same column as for 0 claims, we have the same column as before. We have here the number of claims as we had also before, but we have also the severity component, so we assume that these people here have done claims which are slightly smaller than the average claims of the total portfolio. So what we see that is for 2 claims, the penalization goes from 100 to 444, while before it was 722. So this is more fair for the policyholders who do claims with small claim amounts, as they will pay less regarding the policyholders in comparison with the policyholders that have that had claims with a higher clear amount. This was the actuarial community worldwide liked it, and they gave us the Casualty Actuarial Society's Hackemeister Award. It was awarded in Florida, so I went there and gave a talk, presented our model, and took this prize. So you can see here, I suppose you recognize me, it's not so early before. I have not changed too much, I believe. Here is the president of the Casualty Actuarial Society at that time, and here is my supervisor, Professor Nick Frankos. So these 2 models, however, do not take into account some risk factors, and there are lots of risk factors, so factors that affect the risk of a policyholder to have a claim or the claim amount. And this can be categorized in these 3 different categories. Some people divide it in 4 or more. So we have the policyholder specific characteristics, such as, for example, his age, his occupation, medical condition, when he took his driving license, or how experienced driver he is, and so on. We have vehicle-specific characteristics, so the car weight, the car make, the model, the horsepower, the engine type, and so on. And we also have insurance contract characteristics. Now, the majority of insurance companies do not use more than 30 characteristics for calculating the premium. But there are some others that are a step ahead, that are using telematics data. So telematics data are collected from some devices that are in policyholder's vehicle, and whenever he is driving, start sending messages, as Martin said before, regarding the driving style and the driving habit of the particular policyholder. So we have, for example, we can then use this data and find very interesting information. For example, how many times Spiros the previous month exceeded the speed limit? For how long? What was his speed when he exceeded the speed limit? Does he prefer to drive during the day, and what time? Or he is obliged to drive during night time, and so on. So using this supplementary information, we can by far more accurately calculate the risk of each policyholder to have a claim, and also we can estimate more accurately the claim amount. So some of the models that have been used by us and by other researchers include, for example, so pricing is a regression problem mainly, or it can be written as a regression problem. So from data science, regression problems are well studied in statistics, in data science, in actuarial science. So we can use, for example, generalized linear models based on various distributions. Now, based on various probability distributions, we have here the following thing that we need to explain. The claim frequency is a discrete random variable. A person can have 0 claims, 1 claim, 2 claims, 3 claims, and so on. So it's a discrete random variable taking positive values, integer values. The claim amount is again a positive random variable, but it is characterized by having many policyholders with low claim amounts and few of them with higher or with high claim amounts. So it's not symmetric around the mean. It's like the distribution of wealth. We have many people with low or medium wealth, but few people with very high wealth. So some of the methods that have been used or we have used are generalized linear models for various distributions, Poisson, negative binomial, mixtures of Poisson for the number of claims, Pareto, Weibull, log normal, gamma, log gamma, etc. for the claim amount. And of course, one can use also penalized regression models such as lasso ridge and elastic net, familiar to those with, who are using machine learning, random forest boosting, and many, many other techniques. In addition, supervised models for classification have been used to classify the policyholders in different classes, and unsupervised machine learning models have been used by researchers, such as clustering and principal components, to cluster these in various groups useful to actuaries. So some of the knowledge exchange activities that I have been involved here in Essex include, for example, knowledge transfer partnerships with insurance companies or companies that are consulting insurance companies, and also with other types of companies, but mainly through KTPs. So what we are currently doing with 2 KTPs we have can be written in brief as an automation of claim settlement and of the checks required. So when somebody is submitting a claim, someone from the insurance company must check that everything is in order before press the button submit in order to the payment to be made. So for example, does the number of receipts sum up to the amount required, and so on. So we are using this kind of, we have developed this kind of automation of claim settlement system, and we have finished with that, and we are currently developing an expert recommendation system for those claims which are more complicated. An expert must see them, but there is a pool of experts, and the insurance company must select the one more relevant to the particular claim. So if you have Netflix or another movie company in your mind, in the same way that they recommend you a movie to see or a number of movies to see, in the same way you are trying to create a recommendation system for the best expert to be recommended to the insurance company depending on the claim and so on. We have also created, we have finished the creation, this is currently on the production phase. We have created the claim settlement model that decides if a claim should be accepted or rejected. Of course, this is a support decision tool. It does not decide by itself, but it gives a probability that this should be accepted, and then the insurance company, if the probability is very high and the amount is low, may proceed and pay it, or if the probability is, for example, 50% or 51%, somewhere in the middle, and the amount is large, they may decide to check it again. We have, in the past, with MSX International located in Colchester, we have developed predictive models for finding the expenses coming out of warrants that companies who sell automobiles have to pay later. And also with a company named Polaris, we have analyzed property insurer data 1 year and a half, and currently we're analyzing tradesman insurance data in order to determine the risk and the premium, which are factors that determine the risk and the premium. So the use of AI in general in insurance can be summarized in the following. So the underwriting process, so if we should insure someone or not, can be automated. There are insurance companies who say that if you go to their website, you can be insured in a matter of seconds if you are very fast, in providing the data required To automate the claim settlement, so you submit a claim request and it's paid immediately, there are companies which say currently that you have been paid 3 seconds after submitting your claim. Also, to calculate with more accuracy the risk of having an accident, the premium that must be paid, the reserve that the insurance company must have, with high level of accuracy, as I said, to detect fraud from some insureds. Sometimes they try to do that also, but also to improve customer experience, increase the sales, reduce the cost, and thus decrease the premiums. One more thing to consider is that due to the telematics, but also due to the other mechanisms that they have, insurance companies collect massive data from insurance. For example, there are companies also which gather health data, like Fitbit, for example, that could be used also from health insurance companies, so there are concerns regarding possible data breaches and so on. So I'll stop here regarding the actuarial part, the insurance part, and the use of AI there, and I will discuss about some applications that we have done in finance. So in finance, mainly, people are trying to predict what will happen in the future in order to benefit from this. So if we believe that the stock price will go up, we can increase our long position, we can buy more shares of this stock. If we believe that the realized volatility, the uncertainty will go up, we may sell or be protected by this, or also bet that the volatility will go up and then some money. Or they're trying to predict, for example, hedge fund returns because they want to know which hedge fund manager is best in order to invest with them and so on. So this category of models is quite interesting. Why? Usually people are trying to model the mean, what will happen on average. What is the expected value of a particular random variable. With quantile regression, we are modeling the quantiles of the distribution. So which are the factors that affect, for example, the median of the distribution, or which are the factors that affect the first quantile or the third quantile, and so on. So we have proposed in a series of papers 2 ways that one can utilize the quantile thank you very much. The quantile regression models. The first one, called robust forecast combination method, proceeds as follows. Consider each arrow here as a forecast. So we are using the first quantile regression model, and we are using only this variable x1, and we produce a forecast. Then we are using the median quantile regression model, only the variable x1, and we produce a forecast. Then we are using the 75, the third quantile regression model, and we are producing a forecast. From these 3 forecasts, using some weighting schemes, we find the forecast R hat 1, based 1 here, because it is based only the first variable. We can repeat this for the second variable here, and we have the forecast for the same quantity, but using only the information from the second variable. And we may have a number of variables, xn, and we are utilizing all of them. Now someone could say, okay, why I'm not using all of them simultaneously? Because the information and the benefit that we get if we use one by one and then combine them is by far better in comparison using all of them together for predictive purposes. So then we combine R hat 1, the forecast from the first variable, the forecast from the second variable, the forecast from the n variable, and we get the ultimate forecast. This can be modified in order, instead of going down and then to the right, first go to the right and then go down. So what we have here is we use, again, the first quantile with only x1 variable to get the forecast, but then we get the quantile with x2 variable to get a forecast, and so on. And then we use all these forecasts to get the forecast for the first quantile. We repeat the procedure for the median and then for the third quantile, and then we synthesize these forecasts to the final forecast. So how can we synthesize them? When we have thought about this, we thought with our collaborators, one of them actually, one of the co-authors of this series of papers is sitting over there, is Katerina Panopoulou from the business school. She's a professor also in the Essex Business School. So we thought initially someone else must have thought it before us. So Takei, around 50 years ago, had thought about it, but not with using regression, but only with using the quantiles. So he had that the An estimate for the mean may come better if you synthesize the first quantile, the median, and the third quantile. So the first one will have weight 25%, the median will have a weight of 50%, and the third quantile will have a weight of 25%, and the weights 25% plus 50% plus 25% add up to 1. We have used in the papers more fixed weighting schemes and more time varying weighting schemes where these probabilities are estimated from the data. How to combine this information, for example, that we have here in order to get the final one? We can use some combination schemes or some ensemble models. So, for example, we take the mean combining scheme. We take all the forecast and then take their average. Or the median combining scheme. We take the median of the forecast or the trimmed mean, taking out the lowest and the highest and then the mean of the rest. And some a little bit more advanced discounted mean square forecast error scheme, where it gives more weight to forecasts that recently have been more accurate, or cluster combining methods and principal component ones. So the good thing here with gray is that with gray our model is superior, with white it's not. So what you see here is that these variables for this particular problem, the majority of them for some quantiles is white area, so they are not superior from the benchmark. They are weak learners. But if we combine them with these methods that we propose, we see that the majority here, apart from asymmetric loss principal components method, which is mainly white, and this one asymmetric loss lasso. For all the rest, the combining schemes work perfectly. So we are able to utilize information from weak learners in order to have a strong learner, a superior forecast. This was about the quantile regression models. We have also, with a number of researchers, including my PhD, Jonathan Igorizo, John Vrodos, and John Galakis, we have applied a number of machine learning methods in predicting US recessions. So based on NBER variable, a US recession variable takes the value 1 if we are in a recession or 0 if we are not. So it's a classical classification problem. We also try to predict the direction of implied volatility. If it's going up, it's 1. If it's going 0 or stays the same, it's 0. So it's again a binary classification problem. The direction of the return of various investment strategies, and also the direction of the equity premium. So for all these models, we have shown that machine learning techniques perform by far better than classical econometric or statistical techniques. So I'm closing, thank you very much. So this is one of the final slides. Some of the work we are currently doing, and we are willing to apply machine learning techniques and artificial intelligence and more advanced statistical methods, is in algorithmic trading, in risk management, so how to measure your risk using more advanced methods, how to create a more optimal portfolio, a better portfolio using these kind of methods, and also fraud detection in finance, for example, if there are some, for example, investors that are creating, let's say, Ponzi schemes, and it's not easy for someone to spot it, but it could be easy, let's say, for the machine learning techniques to spot this kind of problematic investors, not investors, managers, in order to protect the public. So this was my talk. Thank you very much. Feel free to ask any questions if you have. Thank you.
I would like to thank both our professors for their enlightening, thought-provoking presentations. Now you understand how messages are being transferred across the internet and how insurance works. So be careful when you drive and you're transmitting data. But I would like to open this now to the floor because you may have questions for our professors. So perhaps a question for each one of our professors. Can I check? There's one at the back.
Can I ask one? It might not be your territory, but the thing that really
Martin
scares,
or Spiros?
Martin, sorry.
Martin.
The transatlantic undersea cable.
Yeah.
Am I right in thinking there's only one of them, and if somebody chops it in half, the world dies?
I'll have the microphone. So the question was, is it just one undersea Atlantic cable? And funny enough, I didn't include it in my slide. Maybe I did include it in my I had a picture of those cables because one of the projects we did, we actually had a communication, through one of those cables, with a live connection from here in our lab over to Chicago, which is one of the places all the big research networks go to. Now, there are many, many undersea cables. In fact, there's a very nice online tool you can use. You can actually see them and see where they all are. There are tens or hundreds across the Atlantic. And it's funny you should ask, because we're just doing some work with Ofcom at the moment. And they're very interested. Ofcom are the regulator, of course, for telecommunications in the UK. And they're very interested about how safe and secure is our network. We're connected to the rest of the world, of course, as an island, very much by undersea cables. So we're trying to use some clever techniques to measure the way packets move across the network, and then we can see which undersea cables those packets are going to go over. So that's a bit of work we're just looking at the moment. So you can try and say, well, these particular communications are really reliant upon this undersea cable, and these communications are reliant upon this undersea cable. And therefore, if that one breaks, all of those sites go off. If that one breaks, all of these sites go off. But there are many of them, and it is a concern. We saw the pipeline, the Nord Stream pipeline will get broken by someone attacking it. Could that happen to undersea cables? Yes, then they do. But because we have many of them, one goes down. And the other area I'm interested in is automatic routing. So the way the internet came about from a project in the US where they said, well, if we get a nuclear strike down the middle of the US, of course, can this network survive? Well, and that was how the internet was created, a network that can survive being cut. And so if we do get an undersea cable cut, it will reroute round. So it is very much in the area that I'm interested in. But that's the part I didn't probably say too much about, because routing protocols and algorithms are probably maybe a little bit harder to explain. But that's it. I'll hand over.
Just again to Martin. It's around, about 1999 actually, I was looking at some of these videos, and just as part of experimental test subjects into it, output here. Yeah. And I was quite surprised when we actually came to use these things in volume, that the whole of the kind of the visual presentation of the subjects of the conference hasn't moved an iota since those initial things in terms of the way they distribute. But more important, I suppose, the question I'm asking is, have individual organisations, I'm thinking of a very large organisation that have had to adopt video conferencing, when they've been faced with the realisation, for example, about the delay impacting on the way in which turn-taking, for example, takes place in a real-world environment, have they come up with heuristics to try and get round some of the problems? Yes. Or make a much smoother way of conducting video conferencing?
Yeah, we've got some patents in that area with BT, in fact, that I authored, using sort of machine learning techniques to guess when there's some latency. So using the measurements we can get from this way that we talk, we can then sort of say, well, they're not talking very well in this particular video conference, therefore we need to move the mixing site closer to where the majority of the people are. So it's a bit of I'm trying to paraphrase it, but I think you probably know what I'm talking about. The way in which these conferences work is that everyone talks, they go to a mixing place, and it gets redistributed out. That's one way anyway. So if we can use some heuristics to sort of say, that's got a problem, so we can make some changes. Or we can also artificially introduce some sounds which sound like it's going, and then just to try and trick people into not jumping in, because they realise, in fact, that turn hasn't finished yet. So yes, there are some tricks. They're not being used yet. These are research ideas that we've just literally patented probably in the last couple of years with BT. At the moment, it's fairly simplistic. But one thing that I did get involved with, which has now made it to the market, and that's spatialised audio. Now, you won't see it on Zoom or Teams, but the reason that there was a door creaking over there, it didn't interrupt what I was saying, is because we've got two ears, and we can hear sounds from different locations. And one experiment we did was we got 6 people and got them to hold 3 simultaneous conversations on headphones at the same time. And you can imagine that's virtually impossible. And then we spatialized it. So we just had 3 pairs of conversations, so 6 people, 2 pairs. And if by having their sounds come from different parts of the sort of position, you can hold 3 conversations at the same time. And so things like that make these conferences more realistic. Yes.
Which are possible to try and begin to tease out when you're ready, who's speaking, who's not spoken.
So one of the patterns we've just done is on that area using machine learning to sort of learn the models and try and trick people into doing that exactly that kind of thing. But you won't find it in a product yet. Maybe they'll take our pattern. We'll see. But I'll close there.
Do we have any questions for Spiros? Yes.
Spiros, take them on.
So one of the things you mentioned I think on the penultimate slide there was you're looking at algorithmic trading. So this is obviously something that some private companies are very, very interested in, and presumably they're doing a lot of their own research. And I was just wondering how academia and private research sort of work there, because it's almost like anything the university is going to be doing is going to be competing with private companies who are interested in making money as fast as possible. So how does that dynamic work?
Yeah. So first of all, one cannot say to academics that you should not do research in this type of things, and also cannot prohibit people in the companies from doing research also in the same thing, because by this they are making more money. So what is happening in finance lately, which is doesn't happen so much in the past, is that many companies and many researchers start to aspire, let's say, the philosophy of open data and open coding. So there are tools that are open to the public that one can use, and of course, they are not not the models that produce, let's say, the most. One can assume that they produce the most of the money or the most of the profit for the companies, but you can see, in some extent, what they are using and what they are. These companies, or one for the other, what they are, what kind of ideas they have, and so on. Yes, I'm not sure if I answered what question, or if this was a question or something.
My question was more just so in your research, do you collaborate directly with private companies on
this particular thing? No, I have done consulting in the past to identify the best fund managers from a set, let's say, of a universe of a couple of thousand or of managers, but not actually say how they should trade, but how the company should select the best 10 or the best 20 in order to create a portfolio of these best 10 managers instead of investing only with one.
Thank you, Spiros. So it only remains for me to bring this evening to a close, at least the formal part of the evening. Thank you all for attending, both of you here present today, as well as those that have joined us online. And I hope those that are present in the room, I hope you can stay a bit longer and join us for the drinks reception at the Winter Garden. But before we move on to the Winter Garden, please join me in a last round of applause for our 2 professors, Professor Martin Reid and Professor Spiros Rondos. Thank you.